Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the City Leaders Breakfast, sponsored by the Forward Foundation. I'm Shar Hermanson, president of Forward Janesville and the Forward Foundation. And I just wanted to start with a little joke. So Megan, I have a new idea. And Megan does all of our events, and I come to her and I say, I have an idea. So about 2, 3 o'clock this morning, I was like, man, I'd really like to go to the ice arena right now. I'd like to cool off. So I want to gather all my friends that I used to take to the skating place, and I want to have 2 and 3 a.m. skates. It's like business before 5 a.m. So if we could maybe think about that. Thank you. No? Okay. So thank you. I just wanted to cover a few things that Forward Janesville's been working on to keep you up to date. I just read a new statistic that we used to have to say things 3 times before they were heard, and then it became 7, and now the new number is 20. So if you've already heard this before, thank you. But if you haven't heard it, you're going to maybe hear it again. So we just completed the Business Retention and Expansion Survey with Forward Janesville, and that is live on our website. And we're going to introduce that fully at our annual dinner next Wednesday, and Megan's done a spectacular job. It's going to be the business event of the year. Not that this isn't spectacular, but it's going to be really great, and we're really proud of what we're putting together, so thank you all for whoever's coming. Some things that we learned about Janesville, and this kind of guides our work, is that 92% people think that the local business environment is very positive. 84% feel Janesville enables them to grow. 60% plan to expand in the next 12 to 24 months. And 74% want to hire more employees, and 92% view Janesville as safe. And that's something that we really have to protect, because having a safe community helps us recruit young people, right? It helps us want to be in this community. So 3 things that we found where we can help our business community grow is, number 1, with housing. So what are we doing about that? The Forward Foundation is commissioning a study right now to look at housing opportunities in Janesville. 4th Ward, Look West, and the downtown community are being evaluated. And so just be patient, because this work takes time, but we will have some information to share with you later. Second is workforce development. And what we're doing there is we work with the students at the Business Hub. I saw them downtown this week, looking at businesses and understanding how those businesses present to the public, and they're doing an audit, and they're going to share that work with us as well. We also do Craftsmen with Character. We have some Craftsmen with Character leaders in here, and we're excited that next semester we're going to jump back into that. So if your business wants to participate with Craftsmen with Character, make sure that you send an email. I do have also a really special thing to share with you, is that Greg Phillips is going to join Forward Janesville. This is brand new, and he's going to help us with some of our workforce development initiatives. So if you have Greg's email, send him an email and tell him that you'd like to be involved. But he assured me that he knows all of you, and he'll be calling you very soon to talk to you about it. The third thing is speed to market, is the thing that we found businesses really appreciate, and I would think that's where some of the work that the Government Relations Committee has been doing over the last 3-4 months to understand a development project on the GM Jatco site really falls. And I really want to pay a strong compliment to Claire Gray and her team, who's running the Government Relations Committee. Todd Needham is on that, John Gaxeter. And then also, I really want to call out Stephen Jenin, who's doing a ton of work in zoning. These folks are spending a lot of nights and weekends and hours just doing a lot of interviews, fact-checking things that are out there so that we can bring you the best information, give feedback to City Council and the zoning work groups, so that when we come forward with information, we've spent a lot of time checking, cross-checking, and making sure that we're bringing forward good information. So if you can please thank all of them, I would appreciate that we show a little appreciation for their work. Before I turn it over to Kevin, I just wanted to make sure that you're all aware of something really important. There's a book published called Jumpstart America, co-written by Professor Gruber of MIT. He came to one of our Government Relations Committee meetings last month and talked about the Janesville Beloit MSA, and that it is listed as number 22 in the United States as an opportunity zone in America. Things that got us on this list: number one, housing costs, low housing costs, access to graduates with science degrees, a good quality of life, and low risk of hurricanes and wildfires and things like that. So we are number 22 on the list, and we want to optimize that. So now I'm going to turn it over to Kevin. Thank you.
All right, thanks everyone. Thank you all for being here. It is always difficult to follow Shar because she's such a composed public speaker, and she's always put together so well. I mean, the shoes especially. I got to get a better shoe game before I come up here, so I really appreciate the introduction today. Before I get started, I wanted to recognize a few folks, and please save your applause to the end, but I wanted to recognize the elected officials that are here today who joined us. And if I don't mention you, we didn't see you check in, and so I apologize in advance. But we have Council Vice President Larry Squire here. We have Council Member Josh Erdman. We have Justin Williams from Senator Tammy Baldwin's office. I saw State Assembly person Ann Rowe come in. John Light, the County Administrator of Rock County, is here. Mark Bozine of the Rock County Board of Supervisors. Kathy Schultz of the Rock County Board of Supervisors. Mike Schwartz of the Rock County Board of Supervisors. Could you please welcome them for me today? Thank you so much for being here. You might be shocked, but today I'm going to talk a little bit about data centers. It's an issue that I know is attracting a lot of attention. There are lots of questions about it, and I just wanted to take an opportunity to share with you kind of what we've done, where we're at, and what we've learned along the way as to the issue of data centers. I know they attract a lot of attention. I know there's some level of controversy around them. I know folks that are concerned about it, and I understand all of that. And so I just wanted to share with you what we've actually been doing and what we've learned along the way, and try really to be honest with you, dispel some myths that are out there about what these things are and what they do today. So just to get started, we are in an RFP process, request for proposal process that we've been going through for the last couple of months. And the reason for the RFP process is a little bit government wonky, but I'll just tell you really quickly. When the city staff is approached with a major economic development project, we are required by city policy to go to the city council and say, we have been approached on a major economic development project. And I'm not talking about your daily, regular, small building sort of things or small business sort of things. I'm talking about things that have significant value or significant jobs that are going to require a significant amount of work or investment by city staff. And we did that because when we acquired the GM Jacko site, shortly thereafter, we started getting phone calls from data center developers, okay? And the reason why we started getting phone calls from data center developers is a couple of reasons. Number one, the sales tax environment in the state of Wisconsin. So the state of Wisconsin passed legislation that exempts the equipment within data centers from state sales tax, okay? So they created a tax environment that made it more attractive for the investment of data centers in the state. One of the reasons they did that was because there was more interest in the state because of our climate. Outside of a few tornadoes, we have a relatively stable climate. Cold weather is actually better for data centers than warm weather for obvious reasons, and we can kind of get into that. And there is obviously a growing need for data center facilities across the world, not just in the United States, but across the world, okay? And so we said, what do you want us to do? And they said two things. They said, go ahead and explore it, but make it public, okay? So the RFP process is to say, we are exploring this idea, and we want to let the public know that we are exploring this idea. That's why we are doing what we're doing to begin with. The other thing I just want to address really quickly is that I know there's frustration about information, and I know there's frustration about these non-disclosure agreements and some information that we've been able to share. One of the things that I know that a lot of you folks in the room know, but not everybody knows, is that as economic development officials, we sign non-disclosure agreements all the time on major economic development projects. We do that usually through the state because the state gets approached by major international companies that want to do business in the state of Wisconsin. And before they even have a conversation with you, you have to sign an NDA so that you don't reveal any sort of trade secrets or anything like that. And then once you get into a process where you actually think a project's going to happen, you reveal all the information and you talk about the project itself and you have those community conversations. But until that point occurs, we do not disclose that sort of information. And folks want to say that this is unordinary or different. It is very, very common. It happens all the time in every city, every major city in the state of Wisconsin. And the state of Wisconsin requires you to sign NDAs before you can even become a part of the conversation. And so that's just a part of the process, and I know that it's frustrating, and it's really just, frustrated about that. I just ask that you be patient, because when we get to a point where we can release the information, we'll have very robust community conversations about what we're considering. So what did we do when we came the issue of data centers? So we conducted an extensive amount of research. For me personally, you hear a lot about things. You use data centers to do research to find out about data centers, which is kind of curious. And you hear a lot of both positive and negative stories about what they are, what they look like, what they do, how they impact communities and stuff like that. So it's my role and our team's role, and Jimsy Kuborn is here, and she's amazing at what she does, to figure out, separate truth from fiction, figure out what it is that we're talking about, and how do they impact communities both positively and negatively, and figure out, is it a good fit for our community? And I would also just say that we are essentially, and I've used this analogy before, but we are at the 1 yard line and have 99 yards to go as a result of, in reference to this proposal. So it is a long ways to go. For you Packer fans, that ends up in a touchdown. For you Bear fans, that ends up in a punt at some point along the way. And we could end up either way. We could end up with a touchdown or a punt somewhere along the way as it relates, sorry, Ann, as it relates to this issue. So we've conducted research. We've engaged with the industry. We've done site visits at places that have actually built data centers. Just for reference, one of the places that we visited was Loudoun County, Virginia. They have more than 400 in their community. There is a road called Data Center Alley that you drive down, and on both parts of the road, there are data centers on both sides. And if you didn't know they were data centers, you wouldn't know. But if you know, you know. And next to the data centers are residential developments and commercial developments, and they look and act and feel like a light industrial development that you would see in any community, anywhere. The only exception is that they happen to have some interesting fences and a security gate on them. So we really wanted to go and understand the real impacts of what a data development center looks like. So, as I mentioned, we connected with community leaders, and we really want to figure out, what is real and what the concerns are, and focus on the positive and negative impacts of these proposals. And so, you've probably heard a lot of these things that are up on the screen, and some of these are accurate, and some of them are not, and some of them used to be accurate but are no longer. So. Just a couple of the ones that we're going to talk about today. Data centers consume significant amounts of power. Data centers use significant water. They pose environmental risks. They have limited economic impact. They strain local energy grids. They are noisy and create light pollution. They don't create jobs is another one, and things like that. So let's just address a few of those things as we go forward. Data centers consume significant amounts of power. That is absolutely true, okay? That is absolutely true. There are different kinds of data centers, and they range as the amount of power that they consume. But you've heard about the biggest ones. So the biggest ones in the state right now are what's being built in Port Washington and in Mount Pleasant. You're talking about 1.6 gigawatts of power that's powering those. Those are located on thousands of acres of mostly previous farmland on the edge of their communities, okay? Those are very big, massive data centers. You may have seen the one in Port Washington was just announced as an OpenAI data center, like their newest version of the data center that they're doing over there. They use a lot of power. The last time I heard about gigawatts was when I watched a rerun of Back to the Future. So it's a lot of power. I learned that from the movie. But the result of that is that they do consume a lot of power. It is absolutely true. And the other reality about that is that they are going to consume a lot of power wherever they're located, okay? And so one of the concerns is an environmental concern, and we can address those a little bit more later. But the production of power in the United States is largely done by burning natural gas and other fossil fuels. And the Alliance and our associated power companies are going to have to produce more. And they have plans they are committed to renewables, and they have renewable plans, and they have solar fields and windmills and stuff that they are moving towards to help supplement their current power. And there are, throughout the network of the power grid, which Alliant is connected to, which runs from Louisiana up to northern Canada, there are additional power generating facilities being built that range from what they are. But they do consume a significant amount of power, okay? It's not the size of the ones that are being built in the eastern part of the state as it would be here, because we are limited by acreage. And so we have only so much acreage and only so much power that can be delivered to our site. But they do consume a large amount of power, and they require a large amount of infrastructure. The second part of that is that what people also say is that data centers escalate the power costs for residents. That is absolutely not true. And let me tell you how that works. So when a company, and some of you may be involved in industry that has done this, needs power from Alliant, Alliant charges the company for their use and for their infrastructure to get it there. And they have to sign what's known as a power agreement between the company and the industry. And the company has to take the power that's being provided to the facility. So the data centers sign an agreement that they're required to take the power that Alliant is building to them, okay? And they pay for all of the infrastructure up to the delivery point. And that infrastructure is incredibly expensive. It is in the hundreds of millions of dollars to get it to our site in particular. We are about 4 miles or so from a very large transmission line, and there has to be infrastructure installed to get it from there to our site here in the city of Janesville. But the issue is that the infrastructure and the power consumption is paid for by the companies that consume it. And so there's only a very small number of groups that can invest the amount of dollars needed to power these centers. And that is something that I think is very important for people to learn and to understand, okay? The other thing, they put strain on local energy grids. Again, that is false. They actually upgrade the local energy grid. And just logically think about this for a second. The data centers are required to store tremendous amounts of data, and they can't go down, ever, right? They can't go down. When they do, it's a national emergency in some cases, right? And so they upgrade the power lines, and then they have to have backup power. And so they have multiple sources, and they upgrade all of the facilities that come in to the site, okay? And then, of course, they have backup generation, as many companies do. And so they actually upgrade the power infrastructure for your community, okay? The issue of straining the grid is that Alliant and ATC have to conduct significant studies in order to determine and make a commitment to deliver the power to the facilities. And they have to have the capacity or the ability to buy it from the grid in order to deliver it to the facility. And as everybody knows, they're upgrading their facilities throughout the nation to address these issues. And industries in general are consuming more power, and they're having to do it anyway. This is kind of putting a hypercharge on it, making them do it faster, okay? They are noisy and create light pollution. I can tell you just from lived experience, I stood 20 yards from a data center, and the cars on the street behind me were louder than anything I heard from the data center. And as I stood there, there was a multifamily development 50 yards from the edge of the property that I was looking at, okay? It's about 50 to 60 decibels that's created from the cooling systems that are installed on them. And there are multiple things that the companies are doing today to muffle the sound of the cooling systems. One of the systems that's very common is from a company right here in Janesville that's building the muffling systems for the cooling systems for these companies. And in fact, what's really interesting is that Wisconsin is a major part of the supply chain for data center companies in general. So when I had the privilege of walking into them, which is not easy to get into, we're talking multiple layers of security and retina scanners and whatever else, that I saw Eaton, which is based here in Wisconsin. I saw Generac, I saw Johnson Controls, just in the aspect of walking around, and I know that there's more that are part of the data center supply chain. So the noise issue has been addressed. The way you organize buildings can shield sound as well. And the other thing about this that's important is that in our case, if we move forward, the city owns the property and can require requirements by our development agreement that the companies must live up to. And so those are the types of things that we can do, that we have a lot of power over how our things are built if we decide to move forward. They use significant amounts of water. That is true in some of the ones that have been built. It's absolutely, there are data centers that exist today, and I don't know if they're first generation or second generation or whatever, but they've been built in the last 10 years that consume a lot of water. I went to one of them, I saw the water tanks, and that did occur. The newest generation of data centers don't. They have moved to closed loop and air-cooled water systems, okay? Or closed loop and air-cooled water systems. A closed loop system is similar to a cooling system in any sort of industry. They use about the equivalent of any other light industrial development that we have located in the city, and significantly less than some of the food manufacturing factories that we have in the city. The thing about the industry players that are in this space is that they are kind of the boogeyman. They're big tech. They have, some of their CEOs are interesting individuals, but they recognize that they want to be good corporate partners, and they've continually improved the technology as they move forward, and they're going to continue to improve it as we move forward with these things because they understand of the significant impacts that people are concerned about. So there are data centers that exist. There are horror stories that are out there about communities that have been impacted by large amounts of water use, and the industry has reacted to that, and they've changed the way they cool them. And in Wisconsin, it's particularly interesting because the air-cooled and closed-loop systems work very well, again, because of our climate. An environmental risk. So you can make the link that they have an environmental risk because of the power generation and the pollution that's created from power generation. You can make that link. You know, it's impossible to do the math about the fossil fuel burning that's required to generate the power at a power plant versus the fossil fuel burning that would be required to have delivery trucks delivered to a light industrial center or a train that has to be delivering equipment to a light industrial building, or you could make that link. If you want to make that link, you can make that link. The thing that is important to us that I don't think that folks fully appreciate is that on this particular site, the GM Jacko site is challenging. It is a very challenging site, in part because of the environmental contamination that exists. We've done initial estimates. It's north of $30 million to clean it up, okay? And so what you'll hear from some members of the community, and you may think this is a great idea as well, is that we should do solar fields there, or we should put the Rock County Fairgrounds there. John Light, I don't know if you're here, but yeah, I saw you earlier, but yeah. And that doesn't work because we have to have enough value created to clean up the mess that's there. We have to have some level of economic value that's created from the site. And in our particular instance, we didn't think this would happen. We didn't predict it. It wasn't something that was on our radar. We could have one single industry, one single user clean up the entire site at one time. And otherwise, what the city will be faced with, which we are fully prepared to do if we don't move forward, is to work in small chunks and redevelop 20 acres, 10 acres, 30 acres here and do it bit by bit, piece by piece, through redevelopment activities. And so that's a choice we can make that extends the redevelopment process much longer, and we wouldn't benefit from the tremendous amount of economic value that's created. Those are two choices. Those are binary choices. There is not another single industry that can do this. They exist, but there are very few and far between. James Otterstein is here. Ask him. We're not going to get Boeing in Janesville. I'm sorry. I'm just going to break that to you now. But that is one of those types of things that I think that we have to address. The other thing about the site that people don't fully appreciate is that there are two active rail lines running through it. The active rail lines are going to continue to exist. We can't just shut them down, put up a gate, say, I don't know if you ever dealt with a railroad, but it ain't fun. They're not shutting down the rail lines. And so anything that we do there has to be compatible with that use as well. And then the last thing that I would just say is that it creates opportunity around it as well. So whatever the center would be, we have the opportunity for redevelopment work on different areas of the site that I think that could be very, very beneficial to the community. Wouldn't make a significant economic impact. This is a common point that folks make. On a per square foot basis, the data centers don't create a lot of jobs. So if you're looking at like a 200,000 square foot facility as compared to maybe a manufacturing facility, there are fewer jobs in a data center than there are in one of those facilities. The world that we live in, and some of you are very aware of this, is that A lot of those manufacturing facilities are moving to automation, so there are fewer jobs in those manufacturing facilities than there once was. The jobs that would be created here would be roughly, depending upon the size and scope of what we would do, are 200 to 600 jobs that pay between $80,000 and $200,000 a year, plus support staff, okay? Those are permanent, long-term jobs. The construction jobs over a 6-year period would be roughly around 2,000. And we're talking skilled trades, union jobs. We're talking electricians, pipe fitters, plumbers, HVAC technicians, and all the rest. And so those are actually categorized as temporary, but those trades, once the buildings are built, are constantly back in those buildings, maintaining, upgrading, switching out, doing all the sorts of things that you would do in any sort of industry to keep your systems up to date. So they are not maybe directly employed, but if I were a high school student coming out of Craig or Parker right now, I would go and become an electrician because you will be employed for life in the city of Janesville if this moves forward. They do create economic impact. The other thing is that on the property tax value side, a $1 billion valuation would result in roughly $4.8 million in tax levy to the city. Now, I'm not counting the county or the school district in those calculations. So for every $1 billion, which is a significant development, we would generate $4.8 million in new tax levy. And there's not a single industry that can do that that is similar to that. I've mentioned the sales tax issue. That is a state tax. The cities don't get the benefit of the sales tax. And so the taxable value of the properties is very, very high. Again, indirect and direct jobs, I already touched on that. Wisconsin is a desirable location for data centers. I already covered that issue as well. The thing that I just want to stress is data centers are going to be built in Wisconsin, and they're going to be built in the Alliance service area. And so there is an argument to be made that if you're just anti-data center altogether, you can say no to these, and that's fine. They're going to be built in the service area, and they're going to draw the same amount of power somewhere else. And create economic value somewhere else and create jobs somewhere else. We have a unique opportunity, I think, if everything aligns, and again, we're on the first yard line, to do something pretty special if we go forward. And so let's just talk about where we're at. So the very first thing that the city council will consider is what's known as a non-binding letter of intent. So what this says is basically, if you're on Tinder, you swiped left and you said, hey, we want to have a date. That's what a non-binding letter of intent is. I don't know these things. It might be right. I've never done it. So it is a period of time to feel out whether or not this is a good fit. And there are additional economic, power, and particular power studies that have to be done. And then it opens up a period of negotiations between us and the selected company to determine if this is a good fit. And that period of time lasts roughly at least 6 months and likely could be extended depending upon what the information is that's been provided. And so that's when we can get into the details about what the development looks like. You know, how many buildings, how's it situated on the site, what's the company going to do, what are our responsibilities, and the thing that we have that's unique is that the city now owns the property, and so we can require a lot of things. We can require them to build buffer zones, to build trails, to build public facilities, to dedicate portions of the property for our use, to make sure that there's integration with neighborhoods and that sort of thing. And I mean, I can just tell you, I stood on a pad of a master plan of a data center development that was part of a master plan that included more than 2,000 homes and multiple school sites. They are being built everywhere in the United States right now. And they are being built in neighborhoods in the United States right now. And some of the biggest ones are being built in neighborhoods in the United States right now. So our process is that that's the first step. We're a letter of intent. The next thing would be a formal development agreement. That gets into the nitty-gritty details. So that's where we would say exactly what we are going to commit to, what the companies are going to commit to, what the buildings look like, you know, what their contribution is. All those sorts of things would be within the development agreement. And we can require a lot of things that's associated with those development agreements. There are significant amounts of information that have to be collected before we get to that point. And then after that, you're talking about, we have our GM Jatco Advisory Board will also weigh in on how the development looks, how it integrates with the neighborhood, make recommendations to the City Council on that. We have a review of preliminary development plans, and then ultimately the development plans are approved and the projects move forward as we go along. So this is really important to understand. I know that there's a lot of information out there, and I know that we're operating in a world where people don't agree on the facts, and that's really hard to operate in a world like that. The information that I'm providing you is based upon speaking directly to the communities where these things have been built, speaking directly to the industry folks that are currently building these facilities, reviewing all the research on the ones that have been built, looking at all of the ones that have been built that have problems with them, reviewing that research, and then physically going to see them and being in the buildings and seeing how they look and what they are and that sort of thing. We've talked to the city officials about water use, wastewater use, about infrastructure issues. We've talked to them, we know what they are, and especially the current versions of what are being built today. We've talked about noise. We've reviewed the noise issues. And then, you know, we've talked about generators, what they look like, what they sound like, cooling systems, what they look like, what they sound like, and then just generally what the buildings operate and how they work. So I appreciate everyone's time, and I also appreciate your patience as we move through this process. I know that it's difficult sometimes when folks don't have all of the information. The other thing that we've committed to is that once we choose to move forward, we'll have as many community conversations as folks care to have. We'll go to any group, we'll talk to them about it, we'll hear concerns, and we'll try to address them as best we can. There are some folks that may be in the room now that are say absolutely no data center no matter what, and that's fine. It'll just be an issue where we have to make an informed decision, and that's what we're trying to do, and that's what the city's efforts are doing right now. So thank you all for your time and attention, and I would be open to any questions that you might have going for now. Yes, Barry.
As we sit in this facility that we're in right now, and I was not an early fan. There's a gentleman to my right, Mr. Knott. Mr. Lindau's in the audience that spread the word on this place, explained why it was necessary for the community. Now we sit here and we're like, oh my God, it's a no-brainer. This, I think, personally, potentially could be the same thing. And so people in this group today, that if you do agree with Kevin and myself and everybody else, in today's world, you know, unfortunately, you know, not as many people read the newspaper or listen to local radios before. So we have to combat that misinformation that's going to be out there. And we know there's going to be plenty of it. We've already seen it. So if you can go to a council meeting and speak, if you can, go on social media, talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors, whatever, if you truly feel like this is good for the community, I personally feel it is, then you need to get the word out, because there's going to be all kinds of people out there that are going to be putting all the bad information out there. So we need to work against that. So comment. Thank you, Kevin, for the great presentation also.
I appreciate that. And I just want to let you know, like, I am naturally a skeptic about these things. I've lived through a variety of flash in the pan sort of economic development sort of ideas and things like that. And I have committed to learn as much as I can. I mean, I have folks that are close to me that are telling me it's the worst thing to ever consider. And they are sending me articles, and I am reading them, and I'm getting down into the research and figuring it out. And so I'm just letting you know that I am trying to separate what is real and really make an informed decision so that I can make a recommendation to City Council that makes sense. If there was something out there that we had to address, absolutely, that there is a huge red flag about that we should say, no, don't do it, then I wouldn't make that recommendation. And that's what my job is, and that's what I'm committed to. Any other questions?
I think you addressed it, but has there been any other interested industries in that property? One big player or 5 big players or anybody else? And if there was tomorrow, are you guys even entertaining those discussions until you get through this process?
Yeah, I mean, we would entertain all discussions. I mean, we have to move forward as if it can happen or not, because there are 10 different things that could kill this proposal before it ever gets started. So we have to entertain all offers. In the past, when it wasn't under our ownership, there had been development proposals. None of those came to fruition. There was a manufacturing proposal on the site at one time. The company that owned it couldn't make a deal. But we are we barely own it. I mean, we just acquired it, and we were committed to a process to develop a redevelopment plan. And we were going to wait. I mean, this is not ideal timing, right? I would have preferred that folks waited, to be honest, so we could have a redevelopment plan. But our plan will be to move forward and develop a redevelopment plan, either with this type of facility or without. And that's what we have to do. And that redevelopment plan would define the location of different uses. It would be a combination of uses, very likely some light industrial, some housing, perhaps some commercial and stuff like that, on the basis of what we have to work with and the redevelopment requirements to get it done. The other thing that folks need to know too is that, prior to a year ago, there was a lot of access to EPA grants that were very significant that would have helped us clean up the site. Those are all gone. Those are all gone. We don't have access to that anymore. So here, and then Sue, sorry.
You had mentioned that you would be willing to go out and talk to different associations or businesses or what. When do you think that would be a great time to start doing that? If I had a group of people that I think someone should talk to.
Yeah.
When would that be?
I think that as soon as we know we're going to make a recommendation. So we don't know that yet. We just got, and just to be very, very clear about our process, we got last Friday an initial broad view study from Alliant that said how much power they could deliver to the site and how much it would cost. And the cost that they cited had a 50% contingency in it. And so we've provided that information to the 2 development companies, and they are actively reviewing it to see if they want to move forward. And so once we know if we want to make that recommendation, and if the companies want to modify their proposals, and if it makes sense after that, then we would be making a recommendation to City Council as early as the 10th. And that's when I think it would be, when we kind of know who we're dealing with and we can share more information, is probably the best time to do it, and to spend the next 6 months having those conversations after that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Kevin. This was very informative, but I still have a list of questions.
Sure.
And so my question to you is, who do I direct those to? Like, I'm not going to ask
Yeah.
them of you today, but who can we direct questions to?
The lady right to your
Looks like Jimsy.
right.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah. And we're going to continue to build out our website and just try to address issues as they come up. And so we're just getting started doing that and kind of going from there. Oakley.
Thank you. I agree with Sue's comments. I thought that was very informative. A question for you, and I know it's hard. You want to have your facts and research. But I think what we're experiencing in this community is something that's waking people up. And my greatest fear is that people aren't awake, right? People complain about their schools, and I'm like, well, are you going to run for school board, right? So I guess I'm looking at the glass half full, and I think this is an incredible opportunity, right? I mean, 384 comments on the Janesville community page. It's crazy. And they're different voices. There are people who are not engaging with civility, which is a whole opportunity for us to teach in our schools, right? I think for Janesville members were booed at council. Like, that's not good, right? But the fact is people are paying attention. So my question to you simply would be, I think the issue is, like, don't wait to share. And this format is great. So could we do this for the community before November 10th? And I know we've got timelines, but doing the right thing can add 2 weeks. This was just very thoughtful. I do see you as a skeptic. These are the things, lay it out, right? Ask for FAQs before. I think it could go a long way. And I know how hard you all are working. And so it's a thought.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's a great idea, and I think that we should continue to have forums on these issues. Yeah, and I appreciate the engagement, and I understand where it comes from. I mean, it comes from fear, it comes from the unknown, and there's a lot of information that's negative out there. I mean, there just is, and you got to sort through it and kind of figure out what's reality and what's not. I'm in an unfortunate position to go drill down to that level. Not everybody has that time, and I try to shield myself from social media as much as I can. We'll see. I make Nick read it.
Thanks, Kevin. I believe you said that the potential tax impact, property tax impact, is $4.8 million per year.
Per billion, yeah.
Yeah, per billion. So what percent of that is the city's budget on an annual basis? And what would you think about doing with that?
Yeah.
Basically, potentially additional funds.
Yeah, so this is the thing, this is, again, thank you for that question, because I need to address kind of the myth part of this too. So Wisconsin finance, the way local governments are financed in Wisconsin is screwed up. It's not a good system, okay? We can increase our tax levy by what's known as net new construction year over year. And this year, for our over $69 million budget, it's $500,000. We're able to increase our tax levy year over year, okay? So that 4.8 is 4.8 million new dollars that we would be able to use annually for our operations. It also means, because of the increased in valuation overall in the city, the average residential tax bill will go down. So that's another factor that people think that their taxes are going to go up. It actually is the opposite, because the total valuation of the community grows by that amount when those properties come online, and then property taxes actually go down. And so we would have a consistent revenue stream that would allow us to invest in infrastructure in our community more robustly than we do now. And it can go to operations as well. And just for an example, this year I had my department heads ask me for 8 positions as part of the budget process. We cannot fund any of them, okay? We have a status quo budget, and that includes police and fire and other areas as well. we have a status quo budget year over year because the way the financing system in Wisconsin works is that we can only grow by the net new construction number. And so, and there's a whole host of things that negatively impact Janesville and the shared revenue formula. I'm not going to get into that, but the point of it is that those things would reduce overall taxes to the residential property owner, or the business property owner for that matter, and increase our operational funds, which means it can go into parks, it can go into personnel, and those sorts of things. What we are doing in our budget this year is we're investing roughly the same amount in roads and infrastructure and things like that as we did last year, and have the exact same number of employees, and we're giving folks a small raise. I mean, and preserving our health benefits. Actually, our premiums are going up 9%, and the consultants told us to increase them 20%. So that is the reality, and so the net new construction to the community means that we can do more, and I would argue adequately fund our public services. Thank you for the question. One last question, or I got to give some announcements real quick. Yes, really quick.
How will you address the need for more housing in an already tight market?
Yeah.
So we're not pinching people even more.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So we're doing a bunch of different things related to housing, and I really appreciate your question there. One of the things that we're doing right now is that we identified an underutilized piece of property in the city of Janesville, on the Janesville South Side, that we're developing a conceptual development plan for that focuses on housing. So it's roughly 35 usable acres, and we are developing a concept plan, which we'll be presenting to the City Council and Plan Commission here shortly, and then going back out to the community to discuss, and then marketing that to local developers to build new housing. We also have a very heavy focus through our strategic plan on housing, and it's called Housing for All, and we are actively working to identify how we make it easier for developers to do business here, and then I would have, had more money, created a fund for land purchases, but I didn't this year. But actively working to buy land that we can consolidate and then market to developers as well. And so that is a huge need. We recognize that. We need all forms of housing, from multifamily to single family, and we're working on that as well. So. Just to wrap up, we have tours available for those who have not been able to take advantage of a tour. I see Alex in the back. He's the best tour guide in the business of this facility. And then on your tables, you have information about the facility that you can take with you. I would not be a good city manager if I didn't pitch my own building. So if you're planning a meeting, convention, birthday party, hockey tournament, please consider the Woodman Center for your next event. So thank you all very much.